average story I hear is that people are sick for way too long, anywhere from a few years to even decades. And then by the time they get, on the right track, it still takes them too long to heal, right? With just our functional medicine and naturopathic medicines, it's still like quite a marathon. And I admire my patients' courage, their desire to get better, and their willingness to do what it takes, right? But my curiosity is like, okay, well, wow, like, can we make this faster for anyone? And that really tuned me into this whole realm of what we call biophysics. And biophysics is this idea that we are these really beautiful humans that don't just run on biochemical reactions. There are all of these physical, like in the words of physics and biochemistry, there are all these physics applications to the human body. So electromagnetism, biophotonic energy, sound, just all of these different interactions that the human body communicates with. And if we kind of tune into that more and more, that I believe really is kind of where the blueprint lies for healing. And if we can kind of touch those aspects of ourselves, the biochemistry falls in place.
Hello, welcome to Beyond Labels. I'm Dr. Sina McCullough here with my co-host, Joel Salatin, our favorite farmer. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Christine Schaffner. She is a board-certified naturopathic physician who has dedicated her career to helping patients recover from chronic complex illnesses. Through her online summits, her Spectrum of Health podcast, Immanence Health Clinic, and a digital program and multiple courses, Dr. Schaffner goes beyond biological medicine, pulling from all systems of medicine and healing modalities, helping patients unlock their innate ability to heal and reveal their brightest selves and brightest light. Thank you so much for being on the show, Dr. Schaffner. How are you?
Oh, it's so good to be with you both. I had such a great time meeting you both at Polyface, and I'm so glad we get to stay in touch in this way.
So am I. So am I. Now, for those who don't know Dr. Schaffner, she is a leading expert in coherence. And in fact, she has this online summit coming up called the Art and Science of Cultivating Coherence Summit. It is free. And as I said, it's online, so you can view it from the convenience of your own home. It's October 30th through November 5th. And we're going to provide a link in the show description. But I want to start here. What is coherence and why should we care about it? Why is it important?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll take a step back just to give people like a little context and happily give you the definition. So as you mentioned in my bio, I see people from really, I feel really blessed all over the country, all over the world. And I'm not like patients first stop, right? They've seen a lot of doctors. They're often going in the conventional system and then really, opening their mind to what healing looks like because they're not finding answers. And the average story I hear is that people are sick for way too long, anywhere from a few years to even decades. And then by the time they get, on the right track, it still takes them too long to heal, right? With just our, functional medicine and naturopathic medicines, it's still like quite a, marathon. And, I admire my patients' courage, their desire to get better, and their willingness to do what it takes, right? But my curiosity is like, okay, well, wow, like, can we make this faster for anyone? And that really tuned me into this whole realm of what we call biophysics. And biophysics is this idea that we are these really beautiful humans that don't just run on biochemical reactions. There are all of these physical, like in the words of physics and biochemistry, there are all these physics applications to the human body. So electromagnetism, biophotonic energy, sound, just all of these different interactions that the human body communicates with. And if we could kind of tune into that more and more, that I believe really is kind of where the blueprint lies for healing. And if we can kind of touch those aspects of ourselves, the biochemistry falls in place. And this potentially offers a more elegant and streamlined and accelerated path for healing. So I just want to give that context. And so, I did a couple summits on what I call the body electric from Dr. Becker's book, and really just opened my mind. I had a couple 100,000 participants over the course of those two and a half summits that I did. And I learned a lot. I always learn, right? Like you get to interview hundreds of people. Of course, you're learning, and I bring that back into my practice. And the more you learn about what we're trying to talk about, there's this principle that just comes up. And I read quantum physics papers, I read these books, I interview people. And this concept is around coherence is always, in kind of like the punchline, right? So I wanted to try to make this accessible to people, because I think on one level, this concept that I'm going to share is really how we're wired to heal. So I brought in Dr. Roland McCready. We can't have this conversation without him, because he is the director of research at HeartMath. He's a brilliant mind who really has studied the physiology of the heart and the electromagnetic nature of the heart, and how the heart really is more there's more information coming from our heart to our brain than our brain to our heart. I think that's always, like, I love saying that, because I think that's an aha moment for people. And our heart really is the great conductor of our body, our brain, and our field. And he really developed this understanding and educates this idea around heart brain coherence. So we can start there. So coherence, just from a definition, is when there is alignment. There is this uninterrupted flow of information. There is this harmonious synchronization and coordinated communication within us. I think coherence can be applied to the communication between the heart and the brain. I think it can be described as the communication when the body is in health and there is a flow of information and energy that is not blocked, and there's not obstacles. Basically tuning us away from this kind of innate intelligence that is driving our bodies. It's also alignment with these other parts of us that we don't talk about. So Dr. McCready talks about this idea of heart intelligence, and basically our heart is a portal to our higher self, whatever that means. So when we're in these coherent states, we have easier communication with your higher self. Again, whatever background or whatever religion or whatever your spiritual inclinations are, there's still a conversation here for you, for wherever you sit there. And I also think, I was always taught that we have more than our physical body. We have our physical body, and then we have our electrical body, we have our emotional and mental and spiritual bodies. And when we're like in alignment with who we really are, and we're more connected to something called the field, the 0 point field, the unified field, the quantum vacuum, we can also just be more in tune with why we're here on Earth. We can also access that energy if we're sick to help us heal. So that's a layered, very layered, response. But I just wanted to give you context, and we can go wherever you want with that, Sina. But I just, I'm really excited, because I think, there's a lot of illness out there. And at the core of what illness is when there's isolated compartmentalization in the body that's not communicating with the rest of the body, where entropy increases, so more disorder and chaos. We know even there's senescent cells that go rogue and they don't talk to the rest of the body. Cancer, right, is a great expression and example of, when there is not coherence in the body. So I believe that when people just kind of tune into this, I don't know about you, but every time I just even try to understand this more deeply, every time I talk about it, there's just like a sense of knowing, like that is like how we're wired to connect and heal. And there's so many things in life, especially in modern life, that try to take us out of that state. So it's really we call it it's a practice, it's a cultivation, it's an intention, it's modern life does not want you to live in coherence.
Yes.
So it's almost like the great rebellion to live in coherence right now. So
that's such an interesting
Yeah.
thought there of
Yeah.
um, what are the what are like three greatest attacks in the
Mhm.
average person's life against coherence. I mean, I think
Yeah.
if I know what is making me dysfunctional, then I can try to
Yeah.
whatever arrest it, change it, whatever.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll start with our emotional state, right? That is something that we all have control of, even though we might not feel like we do at times, right? But we do. We have free will. We're conscious beings with great intent and practice and support if you need it. You can be mindful of your emotions. So, what Dr. McCrady's research showed is that when we are in a state of coherence, we can generate that ourselves, especially when we're in, emotional states of love, appreciation, gratitude. We have this beautiful sine wave, coherent rhythm that we're generating electromagnetically from our heart that helps to organize the rest of our body. When we are in states of frustration, anxiety, worry, depression, when we're out of sync, right? And not to say you have to feel those feelings, we're human, but if we stay stuck in those states, we send very disordered information out into the field around us. It's disorganized for our brain and it's disorganized for our body. So we know we don't feel good, right? When we're in the we move through them, but if you stay in that state, you start to feel sick, right? So your emotional state, and we can talk more about cultivating practices, is number one. I'll kind of like just jump into kind of one that I think is really number two. I probably could go a lot of different directions with the order of things, but just for the purposes of like our
Sure.
community and who we're talking to, I mentioned before we went online, I think there is this kind of interference from especially the herbicide Roundup and the active ingredient glyphosate. Glyphosate affects so many systems in the human body, and when we're looking from like the field interactions and the biophysics of the body, there is a lot of information and great thought leaders who come before us, Dr. Jean-Claude Gumberto and Mei-Wan Ho, who really look at the fascial network. So fascia is an umbrella term to describe that connective tissue and that web, that architecture of what's holding us together. But it's not just a structural function, it is this brilliant communication network. So when I talk about a flow of communication that might be even faster than our nervous system, we tune to the fascia and we try to understand that. And Mei Wan Ho was a big proponent of looking at the fascia in this way. And she talked about how electrons and protons and photons and phonons flow within this network. So when we're talking about these states that are cultivated, I believe the fascia helps to communicate that throughout the body as well as the nervous system. But I think the fascia's role is way more than we realize at this time. So glyphosate is a glycine analog, right? There's many reasons why it's sinister and it impacts us. But when we think about collagen, which is the most abundant protein in the human body and what makes a lot of this mesh network in the body, if glyphosate becomes part of this it basically mimics glycine. So if it becomes embedded where glycine should be, we start having glyphosate in our fascial network. And so that's not going to be a coherent line of communication in this network. It's going to be, the body's going to like, it's going to be a speed bump. And then it's going to be more than that, the more glyphosate you have in your body. So I do think glyphosate, I just have that kind of one lens, but I think there are many other kind of lenses to look at that. And I would say the next part is that people don't go out in nature enough, right? And so I think that we experience a lot of coherence when we're in the elements, when we're breathing fresh air, when we're in the full spectrum of the beauty of the sun and getting all of those wavelengths of light in our bodies, when we have the opportunity to be outdoors and have our feet in the ground and getting those electrons that can just help fuel this informational exchange in the body. I think nature reminds us what it feels like to be in coherence. Even if we maybe didn't start our walk or our experience in nature, we get in resonance with nature. And nature, I believe, I mean, the rhythm and cycles of nature could be described as coherent systems, right? And so I think nature is a mirror and a reminder. And if we allow nature to bathe us in this remembrance, we experience that. And I don't think a lot of us get out. We'll just stay indoors. And there's a lot of things indoors keeping us from, this experience. I hope I answered your question.
Oh, those are three fantastic ones, and they make me really happy because I feel like I'm doing pretty good on all three of those.
Yeah, right. And the people who you educate and teach, they're probably ahead of the curve, right? Because they're doing what you tell them to do, right?
Right. Well, it was interesting. We had a visitor this weekend actually from North Carolina. He was up with his wife, and he was 77, and he was a retired welder. So he was an
Mhm.
iron worker, and during his career, he smoked like a chimney, drank
Yeah,
like a fish,
yeah,
and he's got cancer, cirrhosis of the liver, COPD, all this. And you know what? He was 77. He was bouncing around here healthy. I mean, he looked the picture, and his wife said he doesn't believe he's sick.
yeah.
And,
Which is probably good for him.
and his wife is a biochemist. She's really educated biochemist, and she just can't figure out why he's just bouncing off the walls with all these problems and doing so great, because he doesn't think he's sick. And I couldn't help but think of all this wonderful energy, emotional stuff that we talk about. Sina and I talk about it, and you
Yeah.
corroborate it here with something like this that just shows, with a lot can happen with purpose, gratitude, and delight.
Thank you for joining us on Beyond Labels. Our mission with this podcast is to make it accessible to everyone.
But we are behind a paywall because the issues we discuss are often subject to censorship. We've run into that, and so we have an extremely modest paywall to let us have the freedom to discuss the kind of issues we want to discuss in the way we want to discuss them. And you can become a member and enjoy all this content by clicking on the description box below. We look forward to having you join our family.